Joining me now to talk politics is Andrew DeMillo. He is the Capitol Bureau reporter for Little Rock's AP Bureau, Associated Press. Andrew, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thanks for having me.
We've had some fun this weekend. Friday night, the UALR debate. Saturday afternoon, the AP debate, the AP managing editors debate between the Democratic candidates. The GOP candidates were here on Saturday, too. Let's talk about the UALR debate on Friday night. Had kind of a civil tone to it. By and large, there were some shots, but not nearly as aggressive as Saturday. Give me your rundown analysis on what you saw on Friday night.
Well, and you're right. It definitely was two very different debates. Friday night was a lot more of a civil tone and a lot more of a debate that stuck to the script. Lincoln basically presented herself as the target of special interests on both sides, on the right and the left, which has kind of been her message throughout the campaign. Halter presented himself as someone who is running against Washington and saying that Washington, which is basically a synonym for Lincoln, is paying more attention to special interests instead of Arkansans. And also Friday night they had the addition of D.C. Morrison, who's kind of the unknown factor in the race. The unknown factor being we don't know whether or not he's going to be the reason that we'll be writing about this in June instead of in May. But yeah, it definitely was more of a civil tone. There were some exchanges, but definitely not any really kind of direct, really heated attacks on each other that we saw in today's debate, the Saturday debate.
Yeah. Now, I thought on Friday night, I thought that Lincoln actually came out a little bit more aggressively than I even thought she would be. She kind of, I expect her to kind of sit back, answer the questions, defend her record, but she actually went a little bit on the aggressive side in a couple of cases. Kind of gauge her performance on Friday night. Do you think that you think she held her own?
I think she did. I think she and Halter both did, and there were some instances of her going after Halter. One example being talking about balancing the budget in the Clinton years. She claimed that Halter likes to take credit for that from being in the Clinton administration. And basically, her response was she was there to take the tough votes while he was in the White House. So, yeah, she definitely went after Halter a little bit and kind of continued her theme, which is basically her message has been that she has a record, he's got a checklist.
Yeah. How do you gauge Halter's performance on the Friday night debate? Obviously, the three candidates were there, so it was a different dynamic.
Halter held his own as well. Basically, neither one of them really came out with any kind of knockout blows from it. Halter did well, continued pressing Lincoln on the issue of Goldman Sachs, her contributions that she's received from Goldman Sachs, which faces federal fraud charges. And so he kind of continued going after that. And he was a little aggressive, but he basically kind of stuck to his script, stuck to his themes there.
And really standing head and shoulders above them all. And I'm not saying necessarily in terms of debate performance, but literally, D.C. Morrison, the conservative Democrat, as he likes to call himself in the race, I described him as part-time comic relief and sometime curiosity in this debate.
Yeah, it was interesting. He simultaneously got room full of gasps at the same time he would get the biggest applause lines. D.C. Morrison is a candidate who describes himself as a conservative Democrat, which might be the understatement of the race. He's very conservative. He, in interviews, has referred to President Obama as a socialist. He wants to repeal the health care overhaul. And he had a lot of lines in there that really kind of seemed to take people aback. He referred to global warming as a hoax, said that he would oppose any judicial nominees who supported abortion rights. But he also had probably some of the best jokes of the night, too. The Halter and Lincoln both agreed that they hate the negative ads, hate the negative tone of the campaign. Morrison said he's enjoying the ads right now. Of course, he's not in any of them.
Yeah, and he talked too about how he wished he had more money to buy some campaign ads. And I thought his funniest line of the night was the fact that he thought talk was cheap until he found out how much a 30-second spot cost. So. Yeah. Do you think of the three in that performance on Friday night, do you think D.C. Morrison gained the most out of that just because of the pure exposure? Just because of the pure exposure, and also because since it was relatively civil and kind of tame exchange between Lincoln and Halter, yeah. D.C. Morrison, the reality is there's no chance that he's going to get the nomination. Mathematically it's not there. The big question is whether or not he gets enough to force a runoff, which before that seemed kind of theoretical.
Now it looks a little bit more likely after seeing the way he's able to get attention, the way he's able to charm people while also kind of confounding them. So if he gets more exposure like that, there's the possibility that we'll be writing about this in June.
Yeah, in the runoff.
Yeah.
Let's turn our attention to the Associated Press managing editors debate on Saturday in Little Rock. D.C. Morrison was not there. I'm not sure what the reason was for his absence.
It was just he had a last minute scheduling conflict. Originally, it was supposed to be all three of them, but at the last minute, he wasn't able to do it.
So you had the dynamic of Bill Halter and Blanche Lincoln, and Halter came out a lot more aggressively on the Saturday debate than he did on the Friday night debate. Kind of describe his performance on Saturday.
Well, definitely, he came after Lincoln a lot more aggressively, and it was a lot more heated of an exchange. We don't know if that's just because it was just the two of them, and they were able to go toe to toe a lot more without there being kind of the levity and confusion of D.C. Morrison being there. But Halter went after her a lot more aggressively. Goldman Sachs issue came up again. Also, they continued a debate that began Friday night on just the tone of the campaign. Halter, one of the things that he had said on Friday night, he talked about again today, was that he didn't like the tone of the campaign, and actually said, as kind of an olive branch, basically he took down his bailoutblanche.com website, which was one of the nicknames he had come up with for Lincoln. And he had called on Lincoln to take down a website and also stop using the nickname Dollar Bill Halter. And he kept going after her on that, and didn't really get a commitment from her on that. They also went after each other pretty aggressively on the issue of unions and union organizing legislation like Employee Free Choice Act and union involvement in this race. So it's definitely Halter went after her a lot more aggressively, and they took on each other a lot more directly this time.
I thought one of the defining moments in the Saturday debate was when they had the exchange about the where the money's coming from Wall Street and agricultural interests, and again, union money plays into this too. Kind of describe maybe how that exchange went when you had Halter accusing Lincoln of being influenced by Wall Street money. She countered with...
Basically, the response on it, Halter's point has been that it's unseemly that Lincoln has accepted money from Goldman Sachs and other financial institutions while working on derivatives legislation and dealing with financial markets issues. Lincoln's response was, well, okay, if that's unseemly, what about money I've received from the Rice Growers Association or from the Soybean Association? And Halter may have been his best moment in the debate may have been his response, which was the soybean growers didn't cause these economic problems. Wall Street did, which basically gave him kind of one of his best lines of the day.
What kind of goes forward from here? I think we've been watching this run up of advertising and some of the earned media, the stories that are coming out where they're making the accusations against each other. This debate, I think we looked for a little more definition in the race. We may have gotten some of it, but I don't think it's enough to pull Halter even with Lincoln if he is trailing her, as many of the polls that we've seen indicate. What's the next dynamic, do you think, that has to happen to, I guess, alter this race?
Halter is going to have to hope for more exposure like this. Like you said, all of the polls, the Talk Business poll shows that he's still trailing. It's still by 7 points. So he's going to need more exposure like this, more chances to kind of aggressively go after her. He's running out of time to be able to do that. He has at least one more opportunity the Friday before the primary. They're going to debate again. And they also may get more of a national platform for it as well. Halter's campaign announced today that it had accepted an invitation to appear on NBC's Meet the Press to debate Lincoln. The same invitation has been extended to Lincoln. Lincoln's campaign says they don't know if she'll do it or not. So there may be high-profile race may get even more high-profile attention out of it.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's just what they need.
Exactly.
Well, it'll be interesting to unfold, and I'm with you. I do think that this race has a real potential to go to a runoff. It really depends on kind of what happens in this home stretch here, obviously. Let's not forget, too, that at the Saturday AP debates, you also had the GOP candidates there. And there was a little bit of new news made in terms of John Bozeman saying that he is going to be against earmarks, a moratorium on earmarks for at least a year. That's something new from him. The Baker campaign, which is looking to challenge him in a runoff, struck immediately.
Yeah, they said basically Baker's response to that was that's not enough. A 1-year moratorium. You basically said end earmarks altogether. It's becoming clear this race that Bozeman basically is becoming more of the target for the rest of the candidates in that race, and Baker is going after him a lot more aggressively than he had before. Baker's kind of had these criticisms of Bozeman that kind of relied on voters being able to read between the lines, saying things like no more bailouts, having ads that talk about how he's opposed to bailouts and showing photos of Bozeman but not mentioning Bozeman. We kind of got an indication today by Baker going after Bozeman on a couple issues like that, where that may change, where we may see him kind of calling him out by name more and going after him a little bit more.
I think that's something he's going to have to do if he wants to compete in a runoff. He does have the money to do that. He's got over $500,000, as does Bozeman. They're the only two candidates in the GOP field that really have big money. Mm-hmm. So that is something to watch. Andrew DeMillo, he is the Little Rock Bureau Capitol Correspondent for our Associated Press. Thank you, as always, for being here. Great insight.
Thanks for having me.
We're back with more right after this.